There we go. Perfect.
Okay, good. Yeah, it must have been when we set this thing up. Thank you.
That was a
Always
close
want to
one.
make sure on that. I hope I'm, by seeing my picture, I hope I'm not scaring people away. If we all of a sudden see the attendees drop dramatically, we'll know in the future to keep our screen not shown.
Bet.
Helps with this scenario. But anyway, again, Dan McCormick with Lead Solutions Engineer for Alpha Anywhere. But I wanted to redirect your attention to our website, Alpha Software, and specifically to the blog, which at our top level, you can click the blog here. Notice we now, and I appreciate this, we have a register now for the weekly demo and Q&A webinar.
Yep.
I highly recommend people share that with other people. The more people we have on, the better. We often learn from others. But if we go to blog, I wanted to bring your attention to something very cool. A new podcast. It's the second blog entry. Ben Bajarin and the new Apple Watch paradigm. And this is very, very cool. This is with Dan Bricklin, which is Alpha's Chief Technology Officer, who is helping drive the development of the Alpha platform and has had an amazing impact on our platform. It's immeasurable. Between him and Selwyn and the development team, they are doing so many exciting things, and so many things are in the pipe. But it'd be a great thing to listen in here. Dan's really entertaining, very smart, very sharp, and I think you'll hear that, hey, we're looking to extend this platform to new paradigms such as the Apple Watch. Think of your apps now having notification abilities and interactivity abilities on the Apple Watch for people who are in the iOS area. So very, very excited. So again, go to the blog, look for the new Apple Watch paradigm, and listen in. I think you'll find it very entertaining and very educational, and gives you a feel of the kind of the horsepower we have behind the scenes driving the Alpha Anywhere platform to make sure our developers have the easiest, most powerful platform in the business to realize their development visions, and it's great stuff. Also, I want to give everybody a heads up, and we'll be sending out information on this, is next week we are going to be having a special guest, Mr. David Cates, who is an outstanding Alpha developer. He's going to be sharing with us an integration he did with a off-the-shelf third-party JavaScript tree control, and it is very cool, very neat stuff, and you won't want to miss it. He's going to be giving a demonstration of that, talk how he integrated with into Alpha, and I think it's going to get your creative juices going enormously. We've talked about how open the Alpha platform is, and I'll tell you, this is a great example of that, and that will be at next week's webinar. And again, in between now and then, make sure to send in your questions, requests, at guides@Alpha Software, and we'd be glad to do it. So with that, I'd like to jump in and spend about 10 minutes showing you a demonstration of a new capability which is going to make your life super duper easy. So I'm going to go back into, I'm going to jump over, I'm now into my development environment, and this is where we develop, this is the Alpha development environment. For those individuals who are new to Alpha, this is a great, this is our development. I'll kind of walk through it. If anything gets confusing, please send us a message. We can cover things or make sure it's okay. But today I'm going to continue our discussion on reports. Last week we talked about how easy it was to create a report, and I have this thing called demo report here. Using our Alpha quick report generator, I was able to create a report in a matter of a few minutes and integrate that report into a web, a mobile solution, so that you could use web reports for creating very sophisticated, very powerful data information delivery to people in the field. And the time it takes is very, very short. In fact, we had this great question where someone was saying, hey, is there a way to use reports to create like an invoice? To show someone an invoice, and the answer is yes, and you could actually use that to display to the user to make your life easier. So there's questions about offline versus disconnected, so you have to, but if you're online, this is a great way to go. So what I want to do is show you today a new capability, and it's called embedded reports. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a single page report here. So I'm going to go ahead and go into new, and I'm going to create a new report, okay? and it's going to ask me where do I want to get my data from that report. I can either go against SQL data sources or custom. This is where you can write your own function to be able to reach out to Twitter or a third-party web AI or do some sophisticated back-end calculations. We also talked about with SQL data sources, you're able to use stored procedures, pass arguments, and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a in this case, I'm going to start with a blank freeform report because I want to kind of show you the different kinds of reporting that you can put together. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So the first thing it's going is, okay, where am I going to get my data? And as we've talked about before, you can have multiple different connections to back-end data sources. In this case, I'm going to use connection. And this is an access data, but this is easily could have been SQL Server, MySQL, DB2, whatever it happens to be. So I'm going to click Next. Okay, in this case, what I want to do is I want to create, let's see, I believe it's the relationship is orders. I'm going to create an order report, and I'm going to select all columns. So basically what I'm doing is I'm selecting from my database the orders, and I am saying I want all columns to come back to be available. Now, a couple of things, I could create my own SQL statement. You'll notice it's building a SQL statement here. I could add where clauses, so I could add a new condition where I can say maybe I want the order date to be on or before a certain date, etc. We can pass this dynamically so that people can pass in like start and end dates and all that. That's built into the system, very powerful and easy to use. So I'm able to do that. And if I want to, I can preview the data right here to make sure I'm getting back the information that I am looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Finish. And now it's asking me, well, how many records do I want to bring back? This is for development. If you have like a 1,000,000-row database, you only want to bring back a few. But this is a smaller database, so I'm going to go ahead and bring back those there. So now I'm in my report editor. Now this is different from the quick report editor. Before with the quick report editor, it kind of walked you through and pre-built a report. But this one's going to be a little different. We're going to be building this report here sort of manually. So here is my report editor up here. And then over on the right-hand side, and I know it's a little hard to see on mine, and I apologize here, is we have, let me go ahead and do this here. We have all our different report fields. So I can start pulling report fields off my data source here right onto the screen. So I'm going to say, for instance, order ID, and I drag it right on there, and customer ID. Oh, you know what? I want to do this. Wait a second here. I should have. I want to do this where it's. I want to do. Okay, let's try that again. I want to order ID. So I'm going to bring that over here. And notice it's asking me, do I want a value in the field, etc. I could be utilities and things like that. Basically, I turn on this little wizard that says, when you drag a field out onto the report, allow you to make modifications. So if I wanted to create totaling and things like that. So in this case, I'm just going to put order ID and let's say customer, like employee ID, like this. And if I want to turn that mode off, there's a little genie right here. And I can put here, I can put the order date, and then I could also put the required date. So as you can see, I can start building my report. Now, this is called a free-form report, and the reason why is that it's a traditional report writer, meaning that you can drag things around in the report editor and absolute position them within it. When we use a table layout report, which I'll show you in a moment, think of it as more of like an HTML table structure kind of scenario. So now that I've kind of created some report information right here, this is the order header information. And I'm going to go ahead and put in here the ship name and the ship address, just so we have that information on there to show. And so I'm going to save this report, and I'm going to go orders. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview it by clicking this button right here, and you'll notice that it's bringing out a report where it's showing each record in the database from that. Now I can go back in and optimize and modify this thing. So for instance, I want to add a lot more space here. I want to go ahead and put in a header in the report header up top here. So I'm going to do there. I'm going to go new object to create a new object. In this case, I just want to put in rich text. So I can go right here, and then we'll go ahead and modify it and say webinar, very cool report. And I could drag in pictures and everything else here, all that's available, and I can take a look at what this looks like. Notice it's doing there. You also can add things like, and this is a little more advanced, won't go into details, but I could create a report header and footer, which is in here. I could also create a page header and footer, which is like on the top of every page in the bottom there. And I can change a lot of things. I can also go over here and we have a pre-made set of fields. So like for instance, if I want to put the report date right there, if I want to put the page count, I can drag that out down here. So it's very fast for me to create a modern report with the system, and you'll notice it's putting the date up there, and it's showing 2 records on this field, but it would show at the bottom right here. So that is the first step. So that's my orders. So in this case, our database has orders, but then we have what are called order line items. So now let me go back into my project, and I'm going to create my sub-report. The idea is I want to put right here, in this area right here, I want to put the order line items that are associated with order ID. And so I go in here, I'm going to create a new report, and I'm going to use SQL data source, but this is important. I'm going to use a quick report to make my life easier. And so I'm going to click quick report. And I'm going to go in here, I'm going to connect it to the same connection, so I'm going against the same database. I'm going to pick order details, and you'll notice I have an order ID there. So I'm going to select everything. I can preview the data. So you'll notice the data is really something simple, is that it has the order ID, the product ID. Most likely in the future I would make a view so I could bring in the name of the product, but for now I'm just going to leave that, the price, the quantity, and the discount. But you'll notice that we have multiple rows here that are associated with a specific order ID. We've got 3 for 248, 2 for 249, 3 for 250. Okay, so then I'm going to click Finish. Again, it's asking me how many records. I'm going to go ahead and bring them all back. And now I'm in my quick report editor. So I'm just going to cheat and just click this second button right here and add all of them into there. And I'm going to look at the preview of this report. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my same kind of data you saw before. You've got your order ID, your product, your unit price, your quantity, your discount. Now I could go in here and make modifications to this. I could group the items. I could go in here and change, for instance, the width of this. I could change also with the report settings. I could change the font that's being used, the font size, etc. But for our demonstration today, I'm just going to leave this alone, and I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to call this Orders Details. Easy enough. So now I have my orders here, which again, if I show it right now, I only see the order ID, but notice this order ID here. And now I have something called order details, which is all of them. And notice I haven't placed any filtering on this. I just created the report kind of out of the box, all records, simple to go. So now what I want to do is add this report, sub-report, into orders. So in the latest release, there's this cool new thing, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it up here. Notice I have a whole bunch of controls over here. So if I wanted to add other things here, before I went object new, but I could easily have said, okay, I want to put a piece of text here. So you select it here, and then I say, okay, this text I want to say is, let's see if that's right. There we go. And I can put in there, hello, webinar, folks. And you'll see I can add things by virtue of clicking on the item in here. And you notice we have a ton of stuff. We've got type-in fields, rich text, HTML, bitmaps, and all of this is handling. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. And in here we now have what's called a linked report. And this is the new thing. Note, we could also embed charts, which are really cool. So I'm going to click linked report here. So I've selected it. And over here, I'm now, notice how my icon has changed, and I apologize, my screen's a little bit higher density, so it may be a little hard to see. But I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to drag out here that button. And you'll notice that once I selected linked report, drag this out here, it popped up a genie. And so it's saying edit linked report. Great. So it walks me right through there. So let's go select report. Let me know my order details, which is the one I just created. I clicked OK. So now I've selected what report, but this is super important. We need to now link the master report with the sub-report. So we use this link expression. So we click Define Link, and it's saying, okay, you can map it on multiple fields. So I'm going to click Add Field here. I'm going to select Order ID, and on here, Order ID. And so what it's doing is the order in the target report, the embedded report, is going to be filled in with order ID from the master report. So it's going to link those two together. So now I've got my target field in my sub-report called order ID linked to my there. And therefore, it's going to not only, it's going to filter on that relationship. So it's only going to pull up there. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you'll notice something already. Check it out. It's showing me my report. So remember our order details, and I'll go into the structure of it. You had order ID, product ID, unit price. Over here, we're seeing it, and if I run this and everything works okay, it's taking a few moments to do its linking, etc., because I selected all the records. So, and it's going through. I think it's because we're also on the webinar. It's going to take a moment there. I should have filtered my report down to make this a little sooner. So close to having it ready. Bear with us, of course. Have a few moments here. In the meantime, while we're waiting for this to preview, which should, there we go. Voila, just took a moment. I've got a lot of stuff going on in my machine, so it went off there. But notice something very cool. Here is my master report up here. And notice what showed up right here, my detail report. And notice something very important. It only filtered and delivered the records that matched order ID. And so you'll notice on order 10248, I see my 3 records. Down here I have record 1049, or 249. I can go to my next page, and then it's going to see 250, etc. And here's the cool thing about this. This is really fun. You're not just limited to a single report. So I could put 3 or 4 different linked reports in here and then link it off the master data, so you can create very rich reports. And I'm not just limited to kind of columnar. So let's do this. Let me go ahead and save this. Okay, that's my report right there. I'm going to go back into order details. And what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead, and this is a quick report. I'm going to open this in my report editor. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new version of this. Now, very important, and I want you guys to listen on this, is that you can only, when you're embedding a report inside of another one, the master report can be what's called a freeform report, where you can drag everything. Your embedded reports have to be table layout reports. So they can either be quick reports like I just showed you, or they have to be table layout reports. So I'm going to go back into order details. I'm going to go ahead and open this as a table layout report, and I'm going to create a copy of this report. And I'm going to call this order details table layout. Okay. So now you'll notice what I'm in here is my new report right here. So it's taken my quick report and actually generated a new report. So I can click here, and now I can start editing this to my heart's desire. So let's say order ID, I want to say order ID, and here I want to say product ID. So basically I'm in my table layout, and let's say on this one right here, I want to make the quantity, let's say, italicized, and the discount italicized, and then the quantity here italicized. So you have all of your features here, and notice in these cells you could create expressions, you could put in images, you could put anything you want in here into this system right here. So I'm going to click Save. Okay. Now I'm going to go back into my order detail, or my orders report here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to go back down here, and I'm going to create my linked report. So I'm going to create there. I'm going to select my report, which is my new one I just created. I need to define the link, which we did just a moment ago. Order ID, and notice it's smart enough to say, oh, I've got a matching name, and does that for you. Okay. So you'll notice now, notice how it's showing the new report structure, and click Save, and then I want to go in here. And again, we may have a moment here because it's basically creating the link for all of those at one time. So it's preparing all of the relationships. And I'm on development here. When this is running in production on the Alpha application server, it's running through what's called our report server. Actually, on Alpha, on the application server, it subdivides and actually segments the report generation off to a separate process on the server. So if you add up and load up like 5 different reports, it lets the server spawn different processes to create this. So this kind of slow behavior that's in development here is going to be much faster. So you'll notice here, I've now got my new report. It's got order ID, product, and my italicized and everything there. So I'm not limited just to there. I could go in here and say, you know what? I'm going to make this look a little more interesting. I'm going to add a new row. And in this case, I want to put here, and this is a kind of a stupid example, but just in case, just to show you could have a lot of flexibility on how you do things here. And I'm going to go ahead and clear this cell, clear cell content. I save it. I go back into my orders. Okay, now notice something. It's not reflecting those changes. I went back to the source report and changed that. So what's very important is if you've done that, you need to go ahead and double click on this, or I'm sorry, on this edit box right here, and you'll notice it says, if you subsequently edit this report, you must refresh this link definition. To refresh it, either reselect the report or select the refresh linked items report in the menu, okay? And so I'm just going to reselect the report, and therefore what's going to happen is it's going to refresh the report that goes in there. So now notice that it's showing my new structure of my report. If I didn't do that, then it's going to remember my old report definition and it won't update properly. So make sure you do that. Whenever you make a change in your sub-report, come in here, either reselect it or follow the instructions here to do that. And now if we show this, and again, it'll take a moment because it's got to recreate this, so let's bear with me as we go through this. And then after this, I'm going to get to the Q&A, but I wanted to show you this very nicely, how this works. That you can create very sophisticated looking reports. Instead of just creating columnar structures, you can add many different types of structures. It's really up to your imagination and format them accordingly to come up with exactly what you want your user interface to look like. And I'll tell you, as you can see, what's great about this is 2 things. 1, it's very easy to do. 2, you can start breaking things down. You don't have to create these really sophisticated queries and views and other things like that in the database. You can kind of create reports that segment things into the top level and different sub-pieces and then connect them together, which is very fast and very efficient from a development standpoint. So you'll notice here it's showing 2 rows here. And so this could be a single page report for something that's linked to this master here that has all the formatting, pictures, everything else you would like. And I'll tell you, it's a real fun tool to use, very easy. Again, the real key thing I need to explain is, 1, that the report that's embedded here has to be a table layout report, and if you do any updates to the report, you need to make sure to refresh the report. Otherwise, you'll still see the previous version as it goes in there. So that is linked reports, just added to the tool. It's a real nice thing to have. When you start using it, you will never ever go back to the old way of having to create special views and stuff to make your reports work. It saves an enormous amount of time. It allows you to segment your development into multiple reports and then bring them together. Try it out, have fun. You're going to love it. It's really great stuff there. And that's available in the latest pre-release, so you can check it out at your leisure there. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dave, and he's going to look at the questions, and we'll start working through those. But I hope you found that interesting.
That was terrific. So we do have quite a few questions, quite a few excellent questions, I may say. So let's start right at the beginning. Joe is asking us, how's the best way to determine when to utilize a server-side event versus a client-side event? And does the client-side event only affect what's displaying on the web page, or can you get it to actually, do something else?
Okay, great question. the first and foremost deciding factor is, am I going to work disconnected or not? And do you have something that you need to do disconnected? If you do that, you got to stay client side. So you have to do everything on the client because you won't have that connection to the server. The second question you want is, what is the required response time? Do you need access to server side? I'm sorry. The second question I always ask is, do I need access to server side information? So, for instance, if for that behavior I need to look up some other data, make a web API call or something like that, then you'll probably want to use server side, because then you can go back to the server, have the server collect all that data and bring it back to you. So if you need to run some XBasic code, you need to run some algorithms, some more sophisticated algorithms, something like that, then you're going to use server side. Now, the other factor is that if you're doing something simple, like maybe just formatting a date or a simple calculation or something like that, then you can do it with client side. So you create a little JavaScript function that is included in your application. And the way you do that is, if I go back to my UX, I'm going to open up one of my UXs real quick. Let's go to a customer UX right here. You can, you have over here JavaScript functions. And so you can literally code up little JavaScript functions and have those available, and these will be delivered to the person, and they'll be in the web browser or the mobile platform, and so they'll be available for them. So if you're doing like a manipulation just on the client side to maybe do some formatting or something, client side is the way to go. The other, and this is very, very critical, is that if you have a speed issue, let's say you are doing some manipulations where the user is interacting with the screen. They're like clicking on some things and you want them to see the response happen very quickly. Well, client side is much better for that because you don't have the round trip of the communication lag that goes from the alpha to the back-end server. So let me go ahead and do this. Let me show you a real quick example of what I'm talking about. So let me go ahead and create a web component, and I'm going to create a UX, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go, we're going to call this server versus client, okay? So in here, I'm going to create two buttons. I'm going to create button number 1 and button number 2, okay? And we'll say, sometimes it gets, let's go ahead and close this and reopen it. Since I was doing a bunch of other stuff, bear with me here. I was, yep, there we go. We'll just reopen this real quick. Bear with me while I do that. Okay. Okay, we'll go back to server versus client. Okay, so I'm going to call this button server, and I'm going to create a new button right here called client. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a control in here, a text box, and I'll go display this. Okay. And in that text box, and I know I'm going pretty quick for the newbies or new ones, so bear with me. This is our form editor. Basically, the controls are on the left, the layout is on the middle, and here's the parameters. So I've created a button called server, a button called client, and then I have display this, and I'm going to call this ready to go. Okay, so now save that. If I go into working preview, you'll see I've got ready to go sitting in there, and I've got server and client. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you how I want to change the information and display this on the client side. So I'm going to go into button here, client. I'm going to go down to the click event. So I'm on the button client. I'm going to go to click event. And I could add an action in here and do a whole bunch of different actions that are involved with this. I could show a message box, show fade out messages, open other components, etc. But for demonstration today, I'm going to put in here and I'm going to go into our editor. So now I'm going to write some JavaScript. So I'm going to do a simple piece of JavaScript. Now I could start coding it, etc. But if I want to, I can go down here to insert UX component method, and I'm going to look for set value. Okay, so I've got this thing called dialog object set value. So this is a piece of JavaScript that's built into Alpha that will allow you to set the value of a control. And over here, you see a whole bunch of examples which you can copy. So if you're just learning how to do this, there's a bunch of examples. But I'm just going to go ahead and click Insert. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to set the value. Notice this comes up and I can say display this. And in here, I'm going to say hello from client. Okay, so now what I've done is for the button client, I'm going to create a dialog object set value, display this in hello from client. So it's going to take this little piece of text and put it into the display this control. So I click save it, I go in here, and now watch when I click here, notice how it changed. Now notice how fast it changed. It was literally instantaneous because it is running JavaScript, and if you are against a server, this will all be local. But let me show you how I do it with the back office here. So I'm going to click on server here. I'm going to click on this event here. Instead of going into text mode and writing code, I'm going to go into Action JavaScript. I'm going to click Add Action, and I'm going to type Ajax callback. Okay, so now what's going to happen is instead of running it locally, it's going to make a call back to the server, and I'm going to go Update Display and call the function called Update Display. And then that's going to then send the message back to update this display amount. So I'm going to go ahead and call it Update Display. Alpha is very powerful. If you've never written an XBasic callback, they've included what's called a function prototype. So you click here, you copy that, you open the function declarations, you paste it, and click OK. And now what I've done is I've created a XBasic callback. So now watch what happens. If I go in here and I click client, it happens there. If I click server, you'll notice there's a little loop-de-loop and then there because nothing's happening yet. But it's making a call back to the server. So I'm going to go back into my design, go to my XBasic functions, and here is that function. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say e.control.display this is equal to hello from server. Okay, so what's going to happen is when the person clicks on that button, it's going to make a call back to the server, it's going to find this function, and then it's going to do whatever's in this function. But then what I can do is I can then give it this command saying set the control display this, and don't worry about the E, but this is the way it's done, and there's examples in the code to hello from server. So now let me go back in here. I'm going to click server, and you'll notice that it did the update right there. So I'm going to click client. See how fast that update? Now I'm going to click server. Notice there was a little lag time there. Client, server, client, server. So client is going to be faster than anything because there's no network time. It's all happening inside the mobile or web device. But if you click server, it will go back to the server. Now, the big advantage of going back to the server is in this routine here, you could call a web service. You could perform a calculation. You could look up data in the database. You can do anything you want, and then you just send back to the front end the data that you want to change. So you could be doing validation, lookups, and things like that. So very powerful. So I know this was a bit long-winded, but I wanted to kind of introduce the concept of what's the difference between client side and server side. And in this case, what you do is when you click this button, I put the JavaScript right here on this button, but I could have created a JavaScript function and called that function from the client. In the case of the server, I add that XBasic callback routine, and I give it the name of a function, and then I go into my XBasic functions here, and then right there. And you can get really fancy. One of the things I do is instead of putting code in all of my UXs, I create a centralized module of XBasic call, and therefore when I call my XBasic function, I actually call my library of code. That way I can centralize all my code in a single location. So again, I apologize, that was probably a bit long-winded for the question that was there, but I want to kind of give you a feel. So if you want speed, client side is always better. If you don't need to have any information off the server, use client side if you're doing like local calculations or anything local. But if you need to access resources on the back end, your best bet is going to be XBasic. And the reality is you get a little bit more of a lag, but it's not insane. It depends on how much is going on in the server. But you'll have your network traffic, so there's a little bit of delay because of network traffic. So it depends on how complex your backend process is. And traditionally, I find it's easier for me to do things on server side, to write server side XBasic, because I'm from the Visual Basic world, and I'm just learning more about how to do JavaScript and write JavaScript functions. And as I get more familiar with it, I'm doing more and more in JavaScript, so it becomes more easy to do. So I will hold there, but I hope that answered your questions. Please let us know if we've answered your questions sufficiently, and I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Terrific. Here's just a quick question about when you're using the development environment. Actually, we have a couple development environment questions. One is someone wrote in saying, sometimes I can't display a working or live preview for a page. So is there a setting that I should look at or something to diagnose this type of issue? Do you ever run into that when you're
very good question. Yeah, in the latest release of Alpha Anywhere, this was probably about the V12.2 or so like that. Alpha did something really cool. Previously in Alpha, when you did working preview, it was using Internet Explorer, and it was always using Internet Explorer to actually render this data. It was actually using a library from Internet Explorer, and so we ran into some issues because some people still have like Internet Explorer aid because of their corporate policies, so it ran into a lot of problems. So now when you're in working preview, if you go down here to see down below, you'll notice something saying using Internet Explorer. So I'm still using Explorer, but I'm on like a version 10 or something like that. But by clicking on here, I can switch to Chrome or Internet Explorer, and depending on your environment, sometimes it's better to use one or the other. It's really up to you, but I found that if you're running into problems seeing working preview, what I suggest you do is click here and change which one you want to use. And you may see a little different like look, feel, behavior because it runs a little differently, but that is often a way to switch and look and see, hey, am I getting different behaviors and am I having a problem because of my environment versus there? And that's the same thing there. Now, one other thing that's really powerful about using Chrome for working preview is that I'm going to go ahead and go back and I'm going to select Chrome, okay, go into working preview, and you'll notice everything, but you'll notice here I have something here called Open Chrome Debugger. And so now I can open up the Chrome debugger, and I know it's hard for you guys to see here, but now I have debugger here from Chrome. So if I'm doing a whole bunch of JavaScript stuff, I can be looking at the timeline for how things happen. So you'll notice when I do things, I can start profiling my application. I can look at the resources that are being held. I can look at the network traffic. I can profile, which is really cool, which shows me what's running fast and slow in my application. And that's available if you select Chrome and open Chrome Debugger. Now there's another feature that's really cool too, is that when you're in working preview, notice how I've got my view right here. I can detach my working preview window. So you'll notice now I have a new window in here, and it's separate from over here. So now what I can do is, if I have two monitors, I can drag this over to my other monitor, and then, so I'll simulate that here by making this a little bit smaller. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let me go over here, and I'm simulating my dual monitor environment. So on monitor on the left, I've got my development environment. Monitor on the right, I've got there. I can go into my design now. I can go to my controls, and I can click on this server right here, and I'm going to type this. I'm going to say cool server, okay, and then I can click refresh, and you'll notice that I didn't have to click working preview. Notice how it updated cool server. I want to say something else. I want to say call server and refresh. So you can save an enormous amount of time because you don't have to wait for the rendering. You'll notice when I'm over here and I click, let me go ahead and I'm going to close this. Notice I've got automatic refresh, so I can go in here and say test server. And then notice how it immediately refreshed. So Here, otherwise, what I have to do is click Working Preview, wait for it to preview. And as your controls get more and more sophisticated, that time can become a little bit more. So to speed up your development, I highly recommend you investigate going in here, selecting Chrome, do the detached preview, and then try editing it over here and having fun. And I'll tell you, your productivity will go way up. So back to your original question, first and foremost, check out which version of this. That might make a difference, because sometimes, depending on your environment of where you're doing your developing, Internet Explorer will work better than Chrome. Sometimes Chrome will work better than Internet Explorer. It really depends on what's set up there, and I've solved many a person's problems just by switching that there. And then also remember, you can always test it in a whole bunch of different browsers by going up here and opening it in Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, whatever it happens to be.
Terrific. All right, so here is a quick question that I can answer. Someone asked, said a few weeks ago you did a demo on the signature capture. One question was regarding the storing of signature data in an offline data store, and is that a capability? And so I did research it. It turns out that yes, the data capture thing works perfectly well offline. It was designed to work that way from the beginning. It's a pure JavaScript control, so you've got access to that offline. Next question. Here's a good one. How do you make the font size in the Alpha Anywhere developer interface smaller?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we're talking about being in this environment here with all these fonts here. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I believe it's under Help. Actually, it's File. Where is it? Advanced.
May need to be on the control. You may need to.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm on the Web Projects control panel, which is the newer control panel. If I go to Control Panel, and then to Workspace Properties. So again, there's the Web Projects control panel. You click by clicking here, and then you have Control Panel, which is the legacy. Let's call it a legacy one. But if you go to File, Workspace Properties, you can set a whole bunch of different. These are the properties for starting it.
No, there's another one.
I'm trying to think. Maybe it's I knew it's.
Is it View Preferences?
Yeah, maybe it's Tools. Where is it? View Settings.
There we go.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so make sure you're on Control Panel and go to View Settings, and in here is all the settings that you can use. And I'm thinking in terms of that,
say one of the editors.
System fonts.
There you go.
There we go. So I'm on System Colors and System Fonts. I'm using Tahoma 10, but you could go in here and modify this, and then that will reset and set the font for all of yours. And so all of your system settings that you're using can be done from within here. So it really saves an enormous amount of time for your preferences. And so you can look, and there's like every kind of like JavaScript syntax checking. You can turn that on and off. If you're really confident with syntax or JavaScript, you could create, like for new scripts, the default editor, prompts, there's a whole bunch of little things. So feel free to explore those, play with those, but the most important one usually is system fonts right here, which sets up what it is pieces there. And you'll notice it by category. So you're not limited to one font across your whole development environment. You can say, I want my toolbars to be a certain size, I want my script stuff, I want my properties to be this size, I want my menu to be these size. So you can really take your time and tune it up to your exact preferences.
Excellent. Here's a question. Does Alpha have something like a task scheduler? So let's say I have a component that sends a report via email. I want to schedule this component to run, let's say, at the end of every month or once a day or something like that.
Good point. The answer is there's no built-in solution into Alpha. I think there was a vision towards that, but no. But what you can do is, and this is the method that I have not done myself, but people do this, is that Alpha runs off of a Windows server. And so Windows servers have the ability for you to schedule events. And so you can literally, one thing that's cool about Alpha is that you can write desktop apps with Alpha. So you can actually create code that runs sort of as a command line interface. That's one option there. Another option, if you want to stay web-based, is that what you do is create a control that's on on an A5W page. So let me go ahead and show you something real quick. Let me go ahead and I'm back in the development environment. I'm on A5W pages. I can create new, and I'm going to create a blank page. Okay, I'm going to insert some XBasic that's going to say hello world. Okay, so basically what this is going to do is say display or send to the browser hello world. Now, this could be a whole function calling a whole bunch of things, and click OK. Now, when I run this, I'll go into live preview. You'll see it put out hello world. And again, this is a simple example of it running basically this is an XBasic script. And if I go into the source, you'll see all it's doing is running, oh, darn it. I always hate that. That's one thing I do. Let me go back to that and do this here. So I'm going to go ahead and create new A5W page, blank page, insert XBasic. So I'd write whatever I want to do here. Okay. And then that's it. And then I save that in my system. And then in the Windows scheduler, which is built into the into Windows, you can schedule up jobs to run at a certain period of time. On Unix box, it's called cron, C-R-O-N. On Windows, it's called Windows Scheduler. And so what I do is I save this page and I call it nightly process. Okay, let me go do it right here. And so once that page has been saved, then what I do is in my Windows Scheduler, I have it call this A5W page, and when that A5 page runs, it then can run a process that is done, ready to go. And so that's the best way to handle it on the Windows, is create an A5W page that runs a process and then call that from Windows Server. Now, a couple things that are kind of cool about that is that when you run this process, you could write like a log file, and then therefore when this runs each night, you could look at your log file and say, hey, did it fail last time? Did it do this? I mean, it's really you're up to date for whatever you want to do there. So that is the method that I've heard people use to automatically run Alpha solutions on a nightly basis or weekly or monthly. And since it's just XBasic code, you can create reports, mail them, make them PDFs. You can do database updates, database commands. The sky's the limit in terms of what you do.
Excellent. And there are other cron programs as well, but you may as well use the one that's built into Windows. The Windows.
Yeah, it's free and it's built in.
Yep.
And also will log activity to the Windows log file too. So that's available from there.
Excellent. Let me grab another one here. Oh, here's one regarding XBasic modules. He said, can you show an XBasic module and how you reference it? So it seems like that's a
okay.
new thing.
Yes, I can. And I'm going to do it off the top of my head. So let's have fun here. Okay, so I've created this. So I'm going to do a live preview. You notice it says hello world. Okay. If I go into my source, you'll notice right here that all it's doing is running a little piece of Action JavaScript right here. Not Action JavaScript, but Alpha. So it basically says do this. So instead of making this static, let me create a little XBasic module and then call that from within here to display the message. So I'm going to save this for right now, and I'll come back to this in a moment. I'm going to go to my Web Projects control panel. I'm going to go down to XBasic module here. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new one called, let's call it Hello World. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to put in a comment here, I'm going to go Hello World. And I'm going to create a function, Hello World, as C. Okay, and then end function. Okay. And I'm going to say hello world is equal to hello world test. Okay, so basically what I've done is I've created a little function in my file, and I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to call the module hello world. And so essentially I'm creating there. So now this is really important. When I first create my module, you'll notice something saying. It's saying, hey, you've created a function here, but for alpha to be able to actually see this function, you have to add this little piece of text here that says exports dot, and then the name of your function equals the function name. And the reason they do that is that you may have 100 functions in here, but only want to show maybe 10 of them to the outside world, because the other ones are internal functions. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here, and I'm going to go in back into mine. I'm going to say exports hello world. I'm sorry, dot hello world equal to hello world. And actually, it'd be nice if I actually named it correctly so I don't have a problem later on. Okay. Okay. So I go exports hello world.
Almost.
Almost, I'm there, is equal to this. So basically this is telling it, because I might have another function here, and I'm going to go ahead and create that real quick. I'm going to call it super secret. And I'm going to say super secret is equal to okay. So now you'll notice that I have not put any exports in there. So therefore, there's no way for me to call this function from outside of this module. But in here, I could say super secret, message is equal to super secret. And therefore, this function can call this function, but this function is not going to be shown in the outside world. So won't do that now, but that's the idea of what we're doing with export. So I've created my function called hello world in my XBasic module. I've made sure to export it. So now I go back in here and I want to use this. So here's the symclase. I go dim hello world, and it doesn't have to be hello world. It can say the module as P. This is called a pointer variable. And so the module, it can be, you can call this anything you want. Usually I call it what the module name is, not necessarily what there is, but I'll just go that. And then I'll go require hello world. I should have named it a little differently. It's probably a little confusing for people there. And now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say dim hello world dot hello. You know what? Bear with me. I want to do this real quick. Hello world function. I just want to make sure they don't get too confused here. So okay, so I've renamed it. So my module is called hello world, but the function is called that. So I'm going to click save that. I'm going to go back in here. So I'm still defining hello world as that, but now what I want to do is I want to go hello world function. Okay, so let me walk you through that. First thing I did is I went to the XBasic module. I created a new one. Then in my new one, I created a function, and the syntax is function name as C. I could pass in stuff like GUI ID as C, so I could pass function items in there. But in this case, it doesn't do anything. What it does is basically it returns this piece of text to that function there. I also created a second function, which is a super secret one that I want to use internally, but not in the outside world. And then very important, I have to say exports hello world function, the name of this function, equal to the name of the function. And therefore, this will allow this function to be visible, whereas this one won't. Because if I went in over to my there and I said hello world dot super secret blah blah blah, it would not see it and it would not run. So it's just a way for you to kind of hide some of the function capability. And so with that said, let's see if this works. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, make sure I did this right. Dim hello world, require hello world. Of course, no. Let's see. I'm going. Okay, dim p is p equals require, and then p dot exported function name. I just want to make sure I called it correct. So it's called hello world function. And let's see. Oh no, what's going on here? Let me do a debug real quick. By the way, I'll show you a real quick trick. Should have, too bad it's not working there. This is called debug. And if you put this in your thing, when it runs, what it allows you to do is it opens up our debugger, and we can go step, and it will say, hello world, hello not found, property not found. I wonder what I'm doing wrong there. So, I had almost the perfect one. So let's see, require hello world. Oh, I think I know why. Is maybe it has to publish this thing here.
Okay, it was looking at the old one.
Yeah. Let's see if this works here. There's a little bit, because it is a file. Yeah, no, I'm not going to go through the debug on this. There's something up with my development environment. This is how you set it up. But that, I hope that gives everybody kind of a, I'm sorry I didn't have the wonderful end of the story there, but that's how you operate. You create your XBasic functions in a module using function hello world in function, and then what you do is you export it, and then what you do is then you call it by creating a pointer variable, and then require, and then you then call it from the pointer dot function name. And what I'll do is I'll make sure this is working, and then next week I'll come back and do a refresh just to make sure everybody sees, and if I did something stupid I'll figure it out and be able to have everybody do there. But the real power of this, and this is super important, is that this allows you to create basically libraries of functions that you use over and over again. And as far as Alpha is concerned, it is another file in your system. So you can check this into file source control. When this gets published, you just publish it to the server. And so it allows you to really create code reuse in your system. So and the neat thing about it too is it doesn't need to be compiled. Before, in the world when you were doing what were called AEXs, you would have to compile the code and then put up a new version up there. The moment this file is available, then the new code will run. So it's much easier to debug and do other things like that, and it's easier to manage the code over time and use it between multiple projects. So if I have a new project, I can just drag this file into my project, and boom, all of those functions are now available to that new project. But again, I apologize, guys, I didn't have the final there. I'm not sure. Let me try one other thing. I doubt it, but my preview. Yeah, notice it's saying it's not finding that function, which I'm not sure why. I did all the pieces right there. I'll find it out and let everybody know so that it's not a big surprise next time around. Okay?
That way you can get them to tune in next time. And also for next time.
Exactly. Tune in next time for the thrilling conclusion.
And also next time, David Cates will be presenting as well.
Oh, man, you don't want to miss that. That's going to be just literally amazing.
Do you want to say a quick word or two about that before we're going to just wait? Dion?
Yes.
Yeah. Could you say a quick word or two about?
David Cates is an extremely experienced developer with Alpha. He has done some amazing things, and he does some very innovative uses of Alpha. And if you check out the blog, you'll see his name on the blog showing some really cool stuff. And recently, he created a demonstration where he integrated what's called it's JS tree. It's a JavaScript tree control, and tree controls are very powerful for showing hierarchical data. And he has created a Alpha integration with it, and next week he's going to be showing how it works and then how he put it together. And it's really cool. I mean, it's just fun, and I think you'll really find it entertaining. And what's really cool about this is that it will get you a feel for kind of how easy it is and what the process is to bring in third-party controls. Last week I was talking about schedulers. You can bring in schedulers and calendaring and grids and all these other things that are out there that are JavaScript controls. There's whole libraries of them, and use them in your project to enhance your user interface. So you'll love seeing this. This is great stuff. I highly recommend it. For questions we didn't get to this week, I promise we'll be allocating the time. And
we will. Do send them in to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com. And to sign up for next week, we will have the sign-up link either later on today or certainly first thing tomorrow morning. So the same way you signed up for this one, if you just go to our homepage, you'll see the sign-up link for the next webinar will be on our homepage at the top. Great. Well, I want to thank you, Dion, very much for presenting. I want to thank everyone who participated today. I look forward to seeing you guys at future webinars. And take care.